On January 2015, a Tumblr user named Quantum Child reblogged a mood board for Frances Abernathy, a character from Donna Tartt's novel The Secret History. White swans, Gothic architecture, Greek statues, and a pale white boy smoking a cigarette. This is one of the earliest archived examples of a dark academia post, although it was not yet termed so. Who knew that 10 years later a simple book fandom would grow out into the cultural phenomenon that is dark academia today? We have dark academia outfits, playlists. There's a whole book genre that has grown so far away from its origins that now every story that takes place at a university is labeled dark academia. From master lists of classic English literature to read, to endless outfit videos that will help you embody the pure aesthetic of being an intellectual. Yes, and I'm participating in it today. Many of you may know dark academia as the aesthetic that blew up during the pandemic, but today for this video, I traced back the origins, okay? I went into the internet archives to see how it has changed to become so mainstream and popularized. And honestly, it is pretty rare for an aesthetic to stick around for this long. I mean, do you guys remember Visco Girls? The art ho aesthetic? Angel Core? That's not around anymore. But dark academia has stayed. The thing that sparked the idea for this video is that the other day I walked into H&M for the first time in the years, and I saw there dark academia coded clothing items everywhere. Like polos, trousers, muted earthy tones. If you've been watching my channel for a while, you know that I've been a fan of this for a very long time, and I've made my own fair share of dark academia aesthetic videos. But back then I remember I had to go to thrift stores and vintage shops to find affordable dark academia coded outfits. You couldn't just find them in Zara, you know? And yes, I know that this is because the fashion style the dark academia is based on is the old money aesthetic, which is now a very popular aesthetic, but we will get to that. Eventually we will see how niche aesthetics like dark academia and cottagecore have settled itself into mainstream media just as a slightly different version of itself. But first, let's define our scholarly terms. I love pretending to be an intellectual while there's a sword next to me, by the way. Honestly, I think any academic should have a sword in their office to fight off those moments of despair. Anyway, what is dark academia? It is what we would call an online aesthetic. So a combination of fandom, of clothes, of ideas, of themes. Often certain niche vibes gain a name so that users can tag their posts with that name. So if you have a dark academia post, you can tag it as dark academia so other people can find posts with that exact style and vibe. It involves wearing turtlenecks, tweed jackets, muted earthy tones, drinking black coffee, smoking cigarettes while you think about the meaning of life and you read your philosophy book. Common themes are being a student at a university, preferably a Gothic university, New England style, studying Greek and Latin language and mythology, or English literature, poetry, film, the arts. The aesthetic goes further than just clothing. There's also the interior design. There are books that are considered dark academia about universities, but also the dark side of these elitist little groups. Because dark academia stories are often about very elite students at elite Ivy League colleges. That is why the clothing style is so reminiscent of the old money clothing style. As we'll go through the video, we will quickly realize that there is no such thing as a fixed definition for dark academia. Since it is this thing that lives on the internet, it has changed what it really means and what really is at the core of it over the past 10 years. But where did it really start? What parts of the aesthetic have we left behind? And how has dark academia returned under new terms nowadays? Let's start with where dark academia began in the 2010s, okay? We have to go back to 2015. Just imagine you're surrounded by everything rose gold. Bad Blood by Taylor Swift just dropped. You're on your phone trying to figure out whether the dress is black and blue or white and gold. And most importantly of all, Zayn left One Direction. Okay, we're back. You're back there? Okay. In 2015, things weren't named dark academia yet, but there were many aesthetic mood board posts on Tumblr about The Secret History. The Secret History is a 1992 book by Donna Tartt, and it is the OG dark academia book. It is a crime story about a group of students at a New England university that are all part of this elite Greek and Latin group, led by a very charismatic teacher. Oh, and also they murder one of their fellow students. And the story follows why and how. It's a crime story. This is the dark in dark academia. The Secret History is a thriller with a satirical note. It critiques classism, elitism, and the pretentiousness of these young classic students that are kind of obsessed with their own superiority. Let me get the book for you. There we go. The book is famously written from the perspective of an unreliable narrator, Richard. Fully romanticizes the other students and this rich intellectual university life. Richard, unlike the other students, comes from a poor background. And he writes, "I was so sick of being poor, so before I thought better of it, I went into an expensive men's shop on the square and bought a couple of shirts. Then I went down to the Salvation Army and poked around in bins for a while and found a Harris tweed overcoat and a pair of brown wingtips that fit me. Also some cufflinks and a funny old tie that had pictures of men hunting deer on it. Should I go to the bookstore, buy a bottle of scotch?" When he gets home, he spreads his haul on his bed and he describes it as voluptuous, rich, intoxicating. This basically shows Richard's trying to achieve the dark academia aesthetic, but having a hard time accessing it because he doesn't have the money for it. Throughout the book, Richard is constantly confronted with the fact that he has a lot less money than the other characters, who constantly assume that everyone must come from money. And yet he does everything to hide his history so that he can appear as elevated as them, because he fully romanticizes them and wants to be like them. "I envied them and found them attractive. I wanted to be like them. It was heady to think that these qualities were acquired ones, and that perhaps this was the way I might learn them." Richard is basically the original dark academia fan who is trying to take on this certain aesthetic to feel like he is part of this elite student group, which is so ironic because that is basically what the entire dark academia genre became, but we'll get to that. Because that is what a lot of these secret history posts on Tumblr are. Romanticizing the tweed jackets and the books and the Oxford shoes and the glasses and the typewriters. It is a kind of proto dark academia, I would say. Also, I do want to give a massive shout out to Aesthetics Wiki and the people who post on there, because when I was doing research for this video, I found out that it is pretty much impossible to find digital posts from years ago. It is pretty much impossible to search specifically for posts online from 2017, 2018, 2019. There is no good archive for things on the internet. But the people on Aesthetics Wiki are genuinely doing an amazing job at trying to archive these internet posts, and on there I found screenshots of posts even that are deleted by now. And I also used the Wayback Machine to look back to Tumblr from years past, but even then there just isn't that much archived from that time. I actually do genuinely think that this is going to be a problem in the future for historians. Like, it's so hard to find back posts from a certain year. Anyway, I did my research and I will share everything that I have, hereby hoping that this video in some way contributes to archiving the dark academia genre, which literally doesn't matter to anyone except for me. These kind of proto dark academia mood boards for the secret history could be hard to make because there was no movie material to pull from. So a lot of the secret history posts used stills from Kill Your Darlings and the Dead Poets Society, movies that had a similar university crime vibe. I couldn't find the first iteration of the term dark academia, but I did find an alternative name for it that never quite caught on. This is another secret history aesthetic mood board from December 2016. that use stills from Dead Poets Society and Kill Your Darlings, where the posts are called the aesthetic academic murder. Anyway, the earliest findable mention of dark academia came in 2017 with this post that perfectly showed that dark academia really started as a fandom. The holy trinity of dark academia is Kill Your Darlings, Dead Poets Society, and The Secret History. And these three were very often tagged together in dark academia posts. Why can't I just be part of an elitist circle of intellectuals communicating by quoting our favorite books and getting drunk on red wine every night whilst listening to Chopin? The Dead Poets Society is a movie about a very elite boys' school that is very strict, very rule-focused. You have to be rational. But then this charismatic English professor teaches these boys creativity, to have a zest for life, carpe diem. He lets them break rules, stand on tables. He even inspires an interest for poetry in a group of young men. It is a critique on the strict and overly rational culture that exists in these rich boys' schools. But the story does also have a very tragic and dark twist at the end. Kill Your Darling is another movie about two young poets at Columbia University, Alan and Lucien, who get into a very close friendship that is also a bit toxic and also has some romantic undertones. But then Lucien stabs his professor slash mentor slash predator. And Alan and Lucien's relationship intensifies because Alan now knows that Lucien has killed someone. This movie really highlights the mental health problems and also drug problems of these ambitious students. What do all these three stories have in common? First of all, there's a very dark undertone. The dark in dark academia stands for dark themes, debauchery, murder, crime, broken teacup lying on the floor, red wine or blood, secrets, scraped knees, broken windows, bruises and splinters. It's very edgy teenager on Tumblr coded, and I ate it up. Oh, I ate it up. Another thing that these three stories have in common is the very strong gay subtext. This was a very big part of the dark academia fandom at its beginnings. Richard was often shipped with Henry or Francis, the boys at the Dead Poets Society were shipped with each other, and of course Kill Your Darlings was overtly queer. All of these stories had this like male friendship that teeter on the "ooh, is this maybe more but we have suppressed feelings" kind of thing. This focus on romantic subtones between men is exemplified in another post asking specifically for please more women in dark academia. I feel like there's this huge unfulfilled niche in the dark academia thing. Kill Your Darling, Secret History, Dead Poets Society. There we have it again. For stories about women, like can we have, I love the way that she writes this, rakish girls quoting Sappho and anxious genius poet girls bespectacled, frantically tapping away at typewriters, wild girls trying to start literary movements and being dragged down by their own hubris. Also, funny story, I actually saw this post on Instagram a few weeks ago. Like there are a lot of dark academia posts on Instagram Reels that are just reposts of old Tumblr posts, and I saw this one. It's all just cycling and repeating itself. But this post shows that in the beginning, dark academia really focused mostly on men and their queer subtexts. But this post is a good example of the mention of Sappho. Reading Sappho's poetry was often mentioned as a girl dark academia thing to do. This was one of the first dark academia mood boards that I could find from 2019. You can see, for example, this like 90s phone. I don't think anyone would call that dark academia nowadays, but it is very The Secret History, which came out in the 90s. But these dark academia aesthetic posts very quickly stopped just being pretty mood boards based on these movies and The Secret History. The desire to emulate this aesthetic became pretty clear pretty quickly with posts about how to be dark academia. What to wear, turtlenecks, dark muted tones, wire framed glasses. What to do, read literature and poetry, start the morning with a hot drink. Oh, wow, light candles. And there was also this focus on doing things that would make you more intellectual, like going to local art museums, look up words you don't know to add them to your vocabulary. We were basically all like Richard, rummaging through the bins, looking for a secondhand tweed jacket, just so we could feel like we were also part of this elitist group. Even though The Secret History, the whole point of this book is to criticize these elitist groups and the romanticization of them. Also, note here that she recommends to start a study blur or a study Tumblr where you post about studying. This is the first mention that I could find where dark academia is linked to study inspo. Put a pin in that. Dark academia had a huge focus on the humanities side of academia. So classical languages, English literature, poetry, art history. I don't think this is surprising at all. As a STEM girl that has spent a lot of my time in a hospital where people really did not care about what they looked like under their laboratories, instantly noticed when I walked into the humanities building that people were just way better dressed there. Anyway, there were a lot of literature master posts with all these books that you should read to be dark academia. It was no longer about reading The Secret History, it was about reading the books that the people in The Secret History read. And because dark academia was such a humanities focused aesthetics, there were also posts about how to incorporate dark academia in the harder sciences. Again, showing that the goal here was for everyone to be able to see themselves, for everyone to be able to place themselves into this aesthetic. And here you can also still see faint notes of this dark undertone of dark academia. I mean, I even remember back in 2019, I was really into dark academia. I made a Tumblr post about like medical dark academia because I did biomedical sciences. So I also wanted to be able to see myself in the dark academia aesthetic as a medical student. It was a little cringe, but honestly, I really liked making that. A lot of dark academia posts also romanticized autumn. Like here, illegible handwriting, coffee rings on notebooks, putting gloves on only to take them off again. What does that even mean? Maurice, another LGBT film, tagged dark academia and also My Ode to Autumn. Autumn is very associated with dark academia because it is the start of the academic year. It's back to school season, and a lot of typical dark academia things like warm drinks, lit candles, dark vibes, they all fit the autumn aesthetic. Also, if you wanted another example of the fact that these were definitely edgy teenagers posting this, visited London over the past weekend, and yes, I cried in the Keats Museum. Tagged dark academia and also study motivation. Not to be a fucking nerd or anything, but writing academic papers is actually super fun when you have a genuine interest in the topic. Dark academia romanticized school. It shared the idea that learning is actually also a fun thing to do, instead of just something that you have to do because you have to get a good grade. And this is of course very motivating and inspiring when you are a student. Be happy when you get to write an essay. Again, tagged dark academia and study inspiration. And also note the tag Sapphic and Sappho, showing that in 2019, dark academia was still very much an LGBT thing. So already in 2019, dark academia is no longer just a fandom for The Secret History and dark academia movies. It is an aesthetic that people want to emulate. It has become inspirational, which also raised the question, who can be dark academia? Who is included in this aesthetic? Especially since many parts of this aesthetic, like being part of an elite university, wearing wool clothes, is not particularly accessible to many people, as is the point of The Secret History. We got tags like, let's make dark academia a more inclusive space. And this remains kind of a discussion in the dark academia genre, as we'll see later. Dark in dark academia used to mean dark themes, as we saw in a lot of those posts from the 2010s. Nowadays, it seems to mostly refer to wearing dark colors. In fashion, there's a distinction between dark academia and light academia, depending on the color of your outfit. We can see this exemplified in this TikTok of a girl showing her dark academia outfits, which included both darker toned and lighter toned outfits, and her getting a lot of comments of people saying, oh, if that is your dark academia, I really wonder what your light academia looks like. What? This is actually a mix between dark academia and light academia, two different styles. But this is not what dark academia and light academia originally meant. I think the very first mention of light academia in this post in 2019, saying, you've heard of dark academia, now it's time for light academia, wearing light linen sundresses in foreign countries, eating picnics and pastries in the afternoon sun while reading poetry and laughing with your friends, the burning passion and excitement when you finally make a breakthrough in your research, falling asleep in your lover's arms, sun-kissed and happy. Everything is beautiful and hopeful and no one dies. Tagged, I'm just worried about so many people romanticizing the dark academia trope. You can still recreate this aesthetic without having to be all melancholy. This light academia is a clear response to the dark tones, the melancholy, the obsessive vibes, the murder that was so prevalent in the dark academia aesthetic. That was the original distinction between dark and light academia. But now it is only a reference to purely the aesthetics and the colors, which I think is a beautiful, how do you say that, little foreshadowing for what is going to happen with the dark academia genre. So, summary of dark academia in the 2010s. One part was mostly fandom related for The Secret History, Kill Your Darlings, and Dead Poets Society. It had very dark and murderous vibes to it. And it also had strong LGBT undertones. And another part was this overlap with study blur and study inspo. Dark academia was seen as something aspirational. It was inspiration for studying. Actually kind of the opposite of what those original fandom movies and books were trying to say. Then in 2020, dark academia blows up on the internet. At the same time that TikTok blows up and becomes a major place for dark academia aesthetic posts. Especially in autumn, which is back to school season. And what was particular about back to school season in 2020? People weren't actually going back to their university because of the pandemic. Most people were studying from home. Because of quarantine, we've been doing online school and I've been getting sadder / more anxious these days. Hopefully this study blur will help me. Tagged study blur, inspo post, and dark academia. Searching for dark academia on TikTok very quickly also leads you to the hashtag study inspiration. People were doing online school holed up in their beds behind their laptops, wanting to escape into the fantasy of being in this beautiful Gothic university building, surrounded by other students in cute outfits. As dark academia TikToker Lauren tells Refinery29, the aesthetic is a way to make the most of your current situation. It appeals to me because there's something kind of mysterious and aloof about it. Studying classics at a university in a cobblestone town just seems outside of your run-of-the-mill experience. And I think that it is this overlap with study inspiration that I think is the cause of the what I would call like the aestheticization of the dark academia genre. Of course, there was very little focus on what these original books actually were trying to say, because in 2020 there was such a strong need for romanticization, for aestheticization, and dark academia presented that aesthetic. And this automatically leads to the dark academia aesthetic to slowly devolve into a more shallow version of itself, a more aesthetic forward version of itself. Articles popped up everywhere in the mainstream media about this aesthetic. And with popularity automatically becomes a broadening of the term. Now it is no longer linked to this niche Tumblr community. Once it's fed into an algorithm that can pop up on anyone's For You page, it grows far beyond that. And publishers also caught onto it as a marketing term. I haven't even really talked about the books yet. I keep saying back in the day, pre-2020 boom, dark academia. You had The Secret History, you had If We Were Villains, and at some point you also had Ninth House, but that was kind of it. There weren't that many dark academia books. But after 2020, publishing caught on and many dark academia books were published. I would say Babel by R.F. Kuang being the biggest new dark academia book, and also one of my favorite newest editions, that also very specifically criticizes academia and its roots in colonialism, instead of just being a book set in a boarding school where a murder takes place, and thus being called dark academia. So yeah, since it has become a marketing term, it is again to be expected that we lose the original core of dark academia and it starts broadening itself just to cash in on the trend. But even to this day, dark academia is an established genre within books. And with this boom of dark academia, also more criticism started rolling in. Again, questioning who can really be dark academia if it so clearly romanticizes being at a very rich university, mostly recommending literature from pretty much only like English authors, perpetuating the idea that a well-read person knows specifically a European literary canon. In January 2021, a master list dropped of cultural dark academia, of sharing important literature from across the world, books written by people of color, about people of color. The romanticization of elitism was criticized, the way it tended to romanticize mental health struggles and being overly stressed studying at university. And of course, any good dark academia book like The Secret History or Babel do criticize these things. But like I said, the dark academia aesthetic has really been, well, aestheticized with an overt focus on just the aesthetic, therefore kind of romanticizing the exact things that it started out trying to criticize. Now, the critique on dark academia has already been widely discussed by other people. I will link some of their videos in the description because I don't just want to reiterate what they've already beautifully said. Now, to my favorite part. How do we find dark academia in modern culture today in 2025? Of course, I know that it still exists as a book genre, as a fashion style, as an interior style even. Right? Okay. But I also see the essence of dark academia in modern trends that are not called dark academia. Kind of repackaging the ideas, but just under a different name. The first one that came to mind to me was the whole thought daughter trend, which romanticized the idea of being a woman with thoughts, basically being a sad girl that is sad because she's so intellectual, who sits somewhere smoking a cigarette, reading Kafka and Plato and Sylvia Plath, being smart and well-read and intellectual. I would say the thought daughter aesthetic is a combination of dark academia and female rage. It doesn't have the particular old money fashion style, but it does have the romanticizing intellectualism, the mental health issues, the always overthinking. And just like with dark academia, in the thought daughter trend, the idea of being an intellectual woman comes with a certain look. This time it is not a tweed jacket dressed university goer, but a thin white girl. Another trend that reminds me of dark academia is the current trend of becoming disgustingly well-read, becoming sickeningly overeducated about which books to read, how to educate yourself, how to become well-spoken. Again, very similar to the philosophy behind dark academia, but just without the look of it. It is almost as if we have detached the dark academia aesthetic so far from its original thirst for knowledge that we have come up with new niche trends to represent those who want to learn and read and have philosophical conversations with their friends. Because the dark academia term doesn't really quite encapsulate it anymore. My other interpretation of these new trends is that the dark academia aesthetic is so focused on students that those who have already graduated gravitate towards trends that do focus on literature and philosophy and learning, but are not university adjacent, like this disgustingly well-read trend or the personal curriculum trend that focus on personal learning outside of your job. This has also become a new way on TikTok to recommend books to each other. And just like with early dark academia literature master lists, we tend to just kind of see the same names like Kafka, Hemingway, Woolf, the Bronte sisters, just kind of standard English classics with a big lack of books written by and about people of color, or basically just anyone who is not English. And what I see very clearly in this trend is people's desire to be part of an intellectual group, to be someone who discusses literature with others. It taps into this common fantasy of the intellectual discussion, of looking for people to discuss philosophy books and science with. And I think this is harmless, even good, right? As long as we don't fall into the trap of thinking that being an intellectual has a certain look. I've already talked about this endlessly in my performative reading video, but we tend to have this idea that intellectual people read Kafka and Woolf and Plath, and when people talk about other authors and other books, we don't associate that with this intellectual person aesthetic, so we don't assume that they are as intellectual or have as interesting things to say as someone who does read those classic books. Or we tend to assume that someone who has a certain look, a certain style of clothing is more capable of intellectual discussion than someone who does not have that look. It is literally why Richard wanted to wear certain clothes, so he would fit in with this elitist group, so people would think that he was part of them. I think the thought daughter trend and the becoming disgustingly well-read trend is a sign that dark academia is just one sliver, one version of our tendency to romanticize being an intellectual and having cultural wealth. And I think that whatever the aesthetic looks like is a mirror of whatever our society thinks that being an intellectual person looks like. And by extension, what society thinks that intellectualism doesn't look like. And finally, I just want to talk about how niche aesthetics end up latching onto mass audiences. And for that, I want to take a look at not just dark academia, but also its sister aesthetic, cottagecore. And I will probably do that tomorrow because it's getting really dark. It's getting too dark for the dark academia video. Honestly, I think it's kind of a vibe, but my camera is dying, so I will be back tomorrow. Hello! Filming from my 3-week solo trip to Edinburgh, which honestly I think is the most dark academia place to film from. Yes, there will be vlogs. Anyway, back on Tumblr, back in the day, dark academia often was popular alongside its twin aesthetic, cottagecore. Sundresses, cottages in a meadow, picnics, homemade pies, romanticizing breaking away from society. It had very strong lesbian undertones. Aesthetically, it was the opposite of dark academia, you know, autumn and spring, dark and light. People asked themselves, oh, am I more dark academia or more cottagecore? A lot of Tumblr pages that were dedicated to dark academia were also dedicated to cottagecore. Back in 2020, Refinery29 described the two aesthetics as countercultural. Both cottagecore and dark academia reject our current reality, their deliberate romanticism a kind of countercultural response, and the interminable tragedy of a global pandemic. So we had these two niche internet aesthetics with very clear queer undertones that were popular in alternative spaces on the internet have now been usurped into the mainstream. If you search the hashtag cottagecore on TikTok, you can see that it still has like a countercultural part. It's very much slow living, making your house a more whimsical space, but I can't help but see its aesthetic similarity to another trend. Because if we look at which influencers that embody this cottagecore aesthetic have blown up the most, it's the tradwives. Creators like Banana Farm that embody this cottagecore, beautiful farmhouse, making everything from scratch, staying at home with your children vibe. They have this very strong conservative undertone of this is what the ultimate woman should be. It is no longer a romanticization of breaking away from hustle culture, but instead has become this hyper-idealized version of gender roles. Oh, it's a mother taking care of her children, making everything from scratch to make sure that it's healthy, being the caretaker of the home while the man is out going to work to make money. You know, it's never the man and the woman in the cottage. I think it's no surprise that what started out as kind of a countercultural idea became mainstream when it started going hand in hand with upholding traditional gender roles and also upholding impossible standards for mothers. And it made me wonder, has something similar happened to dark academia? We've already talked about how it has mostly become an aesthetic now in the mainstream. Of course, the fandom and the bookish part exists. In the mainstream, it's mostly a way to dress or decorate your house. And I highly doubt that the reason that we now see so many dark academia clothes in H&M and Zara is because suddenly everyone wants to romanticize learning and reading. I mostly think it's because there's a big overlap with the current trend of like old money fashion. Old money fashion is very similar to dark academia fashion. New England style outfits, wool, blazers. Old money fashion is elitist by nature because the goal is to signal only to those in the know that you are wearing expensive clothes. Only people who come from money will recognize that brand or will recognize the cut and the material as high quality. Of course, there are many reasons why this is very popular, but I think one of the reasons is because we love the idea of being part of a secret in-group, right? That's kind of what dark academia was even back in 2016. Why can't I just be part of an elitist circle of intellectuals communicating by quoting our favorite books and getting drunk on red wine while listening to Chopin? But becoming part of that elite group is harder than ever. Upwards mobility is harder and harder. The option to become a generational wealth starter is pretty much impossible. Of course, it makes sense that nowadays we want to emulate wealth and dress in a certain way that makes you feel like you come from a status that is pretty much impossible to attain nowadays. Being elite and wealthy is becoming increasingly rare, and with rarity, desire grows. And I think it's very important to think about who actually benefits from and capitalizes on that desire from us. Even in 2021, when Rowan Ellis made her critique on dark academia video, she mentioned that the style of clothing is very reminiscent of what she calls in the UK Tory fashion from the Conservative Party. We often see young conservatives in the US latching on to this old money aesthetic. I even have a kind of more gnarly example from my own country, the Netherlands. We have this extreme right-wing white supremacist political party that I'm pretty sure has been proven to be anti-Semitic. Their logo is a classical building. Their leader has given speeches in Latin. They have a youth group summer camp located in a castle where they learn Nietzsche and Plato and listen to classical music while wearing suits and smoking cigarettes. Sound familiar? I think we can all understand that any non-assuming, non-political teenager can be very attracted to this aesthetic, to this idea of being part of an intellectual elite. The same way that you and I were attracted to dark academia mood boards on Tumblr. Romanticizing tweed jackets and philosophy and classical music is cool and all, until it starts being used to promote literal white supremacy. Just to be clear, I am not saying cottagecore is bad. Duh. The idea of breaking away from society is more popular than ever. I'm just asking you to be aware of what other values are sold alongside that aesthetic. Like these tradwives that gain popularity because people love the idea of having more time with your children, having time to make home-cooked meals. And then bam, suddenly there's all these ideas about gender role and motherhood and men and women that is attached to it. I'm also not saying that liking dark academia is bad. Duh. I love it. The idea of being part of an elite group, emulating the aesthetic of being wealthy and educated, is more popular than ever. And of course, I think it's good to want to educate yourself and learn more and read more. Just be aware of who is selling this aesthetic to you and what other values they are selling with it. Aesthetics are a fantasy. Always ask yourself, who is selling this fantasy to me? A girl with a blog that is obsessed with the secret history? Or a political party? So yeah, in conclusion, if we look at dark academia over the past 10 years, the aesthetic part, I think, has remained pretty much the same. We've just completely lost the link to the fandom part of the secret history, Kill Your Darlings, Dead Poets Society. We've lost the dark part of it, the murder. And we've also lost the queer part of it. Basically, we just lost all the alternative, more niche parts of the aesthetic, and it has now just become this mainstream, more placated version of itself. And now we can see this same aesthetic often being used to sell the fantasy of elitism and wealth. That is my interpretation of the whole thing. Please let me know what you think. I feel like I spent so much time diving deep into the dark academia aesthetic. I'm incapable of looking at it in a normal way anymore. Please let me know, do you agree with my analysis or do you have things to add to it? I would love to know your opinion. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and I will see you soon in another video very soon. Goodbye!